So some of you might know me because I wrote a book called Running Lean, but I like to start off by saying that by way of introduction, I'm first and foremost an entrepreneur. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is the sad reality. Most products fail. The more interesting number, though, is that 2/3 of the companies that actually succeed report having drastically changing their plans along the way. So what we learn from that is what separates the successful entrepreneurs from those that don't quite make it is not necessarily starting with that perfect vision, that perfect plan A, but finding a plan that works before running out of resources. So we're having problems with the, there we go. So it's not finding a perfect plan A, but finding a plan that works before running out of resources. Is it easier if someone switches this? OK. So what I want to talk about today is really that path of finding that plan that works, so what we normally call product market fit. So let's start out by defining what product market fit is. So some of you might know who Mark Andreessen is. He's not the one who coined the term, but he is certainly known for the one who popularized the term product market fit. So it's really the point where the hockey stick curve starts to take off, where customers are buying more than you can produce, where they're using your product. And it's one of those definitions where, while it's great to know that you have achieved product market fit, that definition doesn't help you get there. So if you have to ask if you've achieved product market fit, chances are you haven't. So that leads us to believe that product market fit is this black art, or it requires luck or some magic to get there. But there is a scientific approach to get to that, which is what I want to talk about today. So there is a systematic way for going from your initial idea to this product market fit. And so my talk's going to be organized in these three stages. And we'll walk through each one in turn. So before you actually even think of product market fit, you have to start with problem-solution fit. And the key question there is asking, do I even have a problem that is worth solving in the first place? And so the way that you get started with that is you have to start by drawing a line in the sand, by putting a stake in the ground, by documenting where you are headed, your destination, what that initial vision really is. And the reason for that is because of this. Is as entrepreneurs, we are especially gifted at rationalizing anything. So no matter what information is thrown at us, whether good or bad, we can always rationalize it to believe what we think is true. And so to avoid that, and so maybe I'll take a step back and say that passion and perseverance is an important quality of being an entrepreneur, but left unchecked, that can turn into blind faith. And what we try to encourage in a lean startup is to try to balance that with facts and not run on blind faith and take a more empirical, almost scientific approach. And so that's why it's important to draw the stake in the ground. Now, typically, we have used business plans for these purposes, for documenting those core assumptions. How many people in the audience have ever written a business plan before? Show of hands. Now, keep your hands up if you enjoy that process. So one, two. There are two people in the audience that do, and there always is a handful of people, and that's great because it is a good exercise for the entrepreneur. The problem is the people who typically make you write it don't actually take the time to read the business plan. They want a more condensed version of it. So they want the 10-page slide deck. They want the 30-second elevator pitch. They want you to interest them, to excite them. And so why don't you start there? So the process of documenting that vision is very important, but the format is all wrong. And so there is this new format that has been popularized over the years called the business model canvas format. Now, this is a slight variation of that. This is the lean canvas format, which is my optimization, my twist on Alex Osterwalder's work, which I'll show here in a second. But I made certain changes to make this a lot more actionable for the products that I was building. This is what the original canvas looks like. And for those that are interested, these are some of the changes that I made. I'm not going to walk into those changes or why I made them, but there is a blog post that goes into 1,000 words on why those changes made sense to me. And I'm not going to walk through the business model canvas either, but for those of you that have written business plans or have been thinking about your business, you'll recognize a lot of the building blocks. There are things that would typically go into documenting that vision or documenting that business model. Now, the important thing here, the key takeaway, is that as entrepreneurs, we look at the canvas like this. We are in love with our solution. That is really what gets us excited. That's, if I ask how many people are here to build great products, probably all the hands will go up, because we fall in love with that solution, what I call awesome. But here's the thing, is that the solution by itself is not enough. the solution is not the product of the startups. Most startups fail not because we fail to build what we set out to build, but because we fail to find the right customers, the right markets for our products. And so it's all the other things that are on that canvas. And so when you're thinking of product market fit, you have to build a great product. That is a given, but you have to make the rest of the business model canvas work as well. And so if you'd seen the business model canvas, there was a product side, there was a market side, and you have to get these pieces fit together like you would fit a jigsaw puzzle. Now, having a great vision is important, but it's not a guarantee of success, and it's only the beginning. You also need to then take the next step and come up with an implementation strategy or a rollout strategy for how you will realize that vision. So the other way to explain the point that I made about entrepreneurs a second ago is that when entrepreneurs get hit by an idea, that idea usually comes in as a single stream of consciousness. But if we deconstruct that, we can break it into its component pieces. At the bottommost level, we have the vision, what it is we want to achieve. Then is the strategy, which is how we want to achieve it. And at the very top is the product. And this product strategy vision pyramid is how we would structure a company that we're building. Now, the problem too many entrepreneurs make is they rush up this pyramid and they go all the way up to the top and start optimizing on the product. We fall in love with the solution and we start building it. But the vision and strategy are foundational pieces, and you have to have a solid foundation before you start that optimization exercise. So vision is very important, but strategy is equally important. So if we take Facebook as an example, Facebook didn't win on vision. They weren't the first to build a social network, and everyone had the same vision. Everyone wanted to build the largest social network on the planet, and they were far bigger social networks when Facebook started with lots of investment, lots of unfair advantages. They didn't have any. And the way they won was with strategy. The way they rolled out their social network was unlike any others. While all the others were trying to build the biggest social network, they were trying to take pre-existing social networks that existed on college campuses and turn them online. And through that disciplined rollout strategy, they were able to build a social network that not only grew to be very large, but had very high engagement, and eventually became what people used, while the others were just big for name, but not really high on activation and engagement, which I'll talk about here in a second. So the strategy is almost as important as the vision when you're thinking of how you get to that product market fit stage. Now, we all would like to build a company like Facebook, which is used by practically everyone on this planet, but even they started with a very clear definition of their early adopter, which happened to be a college student, and not just on any campus, but the Harvard campus. And that's another key point, is that the early adopters really define your early business model. They're really going to drive that business model. Now, for those of you that have read Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, you would be quick to point out that early adopters behave very differently from the mainstream market, and there's this chasm. It's usually hard to cross that chasm, and there's a whole book, and there's lots of material written on this. But here's the thing. Most of you are at the beginning of this curve. Trying to worry about the mainstream market is a mistake. So you should be so lucky to have this problem down the road. You should be lucky to have to worry about the chasm down the road. And so rather than trying to worry about the mainstream market, instead focus on the early adopter market. And the key there is that it's impossible to really leapfrog the early adopters into mainstream. You really have to ride that curve and use the momentum of the early adopters to really leap over that chasm. So that's a latter stage problem, but the point is you have to start from that beginning. Now, the reason we engage early adopters is really for this purpose, is we want to get inside their minds, understand their understanding of the world and their problems, from which we then begin to create the first iteration, the first solution that we want to then put out and start this process of learning. And the tool we use for that is the minimum viable product, or MVP. Now, there are a lot of definitions of MVP out there. The one that I subscribe to the most is really a product that you put out there. It's the smallest solution that you can build that delivers value. And a bonus there is it also needs to capture some of that value, which is just a fancy way of saying that if you're going to charge for your product, start charging with your MVP. Don't hide behind excuses of betas or alphas or things like that. If you're delivering value, capture some of that value, because that is one of the more riskier parts of your business model anyway. So once you've got this MVP built, you can now get into the second stage, which is early traction, which is starting to ask the next question: have I really built something that people want? Have I built something that is valuable? Now, when you launch a product, lots of things can and do go wrong. Now, typically the answer is looking for data, looking for metrics, and looking for answers within those metrics. But the problem is that in today's world, we can measure almost anything. And so what ends up happening is we actually collect too much information, and we end up drowning in our own set of numbers. And we don't quite know what to really make sense of once we launch. So things don't get clear after we launch. They typically get more confusing. And I'll show you how that really happens. So this is the vision of our perfect dashboard. Some of you might not see that picture well enough, but that's Tony Stark, Iron Man, in his workshop. And if you've watched the movie, he's there in this workshop where he's got the dashboards in front of him. He's clicking around and getting all these numbers and doing his work. And that's the dashboard we envision when we build our products. But this is what the reality really looks like. So we typically start out with a few tools, and we add on more tools, and we get lost in these numbers. Just Google Analytics alone can throw out hundreds and hundreds of numbers at you, and you don't quite know which ones to really focus on and how to really make sense of the data. So the ways to counteract that when you first launch is not looking at all those numbers, not looking at where your traffic is coming from, and all those things will be important for troubleshooting and optimizing later. But you need to start out with a standardized measure of accounting, a standardized measure for progress. And so just like in the financial accounting world, we have standards, financial statements, we have income statements and balance sheets that help you measure the progress of an established company. We similarly need the equivalent for startups. We need something called innovation accounting, where we've got the standard measure of progress, so we can ask the question, are we making progress from one day to the next, from 1 week to the next, from 1 month to the next? And so at my company, Spark 59, we have standardized on Dave McClure's Pirate Metrics, who I think many of you know, and he's going to come and spend a lot of time with you at the festival. But we have standardized on this way of measuring progress. And really what it does is it helps you capture the customer life cycle and really be able to highlight what's important. So I'm not going to walk through these because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but the idea here is that it allows you to capture the full customer life cycle, and it's not just limited to startups. This can be used for modeling any kind of business. The other key point here is you want to focus on delivering value over growth. So trying to grow a company without having the basics down, without being able to deliver value, is a form of waste. And the way that we do that, I'll kind of highlight that on this funnel. So the top of the funnel is acquisition. It's how customers get in to see your product. The first thing that really matters is delivering that great user experience to them. So that's the first value metric. That's the low-hanging fruit you can tackle. The next thing is retention. So making sure that people not only get that first user experience, but they're able to come back repeatedly and use your product. And these two are the most important things to initially focus on. Things like revenue matter, but if you're charging for your product from day one, the revenue takes care of itself. If people are using it repeatedly, they will keep paying for it. And for other markets where revenue tends to be a more multi-sided market situation, revenue may be deferred, and that's fine for other reasons. But the point of this stage is getting people from the top of the funnel all the way to the bottom, and getting enough people, not all the people, but enough people through that funnel. Now, because at this stage you don't have a lot of customers, the learning tends to be more qualitative. Now, when I share this with people, people oftentimes get very nervous because I tell them, at least for the first stage, rather than trying to get tens of thousands of people to use your product and maybe convert them over time, just try to get 10 referenceable customers. Just try to get 10 people through that funnel who can go from acquisition all the way down to maybe paying you and giving you a positive testimonial, which you can put on your website. Just do that. And when people hear that, they said, how is that statistically significant? Because I want to get tens of thousands of people on my site eventually. And I tell them, if you can't even get those 10 people on your site, if you can't get 10 people through the funnel, that's pretty significant. If you can't do that with people that you handpick, with your early adopters who you've talked through, you're giving them the high-touch concierge treatment, and if they don't get value with your product, there's no way that you're going to get that by getting tens of thousands of people to your landing page or to your website. Nothing's really going to change there. So at this stage, you don't really need any fancy analytics tool or any fancy third-party metrics kind of a solution. And I'm saying this despite the fact that I do build one of those fancy analytics tools. But what we do at even my companies in the earliest stages, we use just a simple board like this. So this is a Trello Kanban board, and we list all our customers. When you can count the number of customers you have on your fingertips, that's actually a gift because it allows you to give them that personal attention, to get them through the funnel, to do what it takes to get them through there. Now, once you have more customers than you can count, this will not scale, and you then move on to more numbers, which I'll talk about in the third stage. But this saves you a lot of time in the beginning. You don't need to instrument these analytics. You don't need to collect all these events, because at this stage, you can really talk to your customers, which is the gift that you have. So once you've got the early traction down, once you can get enough people through that conversion funnel, so maybe 10, 20, 30 people through that funnel, you then go into the final stage, which is now, how do I scale this? I've obviously built something that enough people are saying is valuable. How do I now scale this to the level that I need to get to? And this is where you start asking your engine of growth questions. So engine of growth is a term that Eric Ries coined. He describes in his book, The Lean Startup. And essentially, the premise there is that there are 3 ways that startups can grow. There are 3 primary engines of growth. And so I'll illustrate them here again as well. So if we look at the customer funnel, the first engine of growth is working at the top of the funnel. So it's revisiting this funnel. So now we have got the middle part figured out. We have got value figured out. We now go to the very top of the funnel and figure out a way to acquire customers at scale in a cost-effective manner. So the reason it's called a paid engine of growth is you might actually buy ads, you might actually buy traffic to be able to then get them in your funnel and convert them over time. And if you can do that where the cost of customer acquisition is less than your lifetime value, then you've got an engine that is sustainable and that will grow. Even if you're using things like social media, because people say, well, social media is free, I don't have to pay anything. Well, that requires a lot of human capital, so there is no such thing as a free lunch. Even those types of channels you have to invest in. You have to take the time to blog, you have to take the time to tweet, and that is a paid channel and paid engine of growth. Similarly, if you were hiring a direct sales force, there's salaries that go into that to go in and sell to more companies, and so all those fall under the paid engine of growth. The other way that you can grow is by improving your retention numbers. So in the last stage, you have to get some level of retention from your early adopters. Well, now you want to increase that at scale. And so this is the second engine of growth, which is the sticky engine of growth. So can we improve the lifetime value of our customers by making them use our products longer and keep paying us either in a recurring service form or buying more of the product from us, upsells, cross-sells, things like that. So that would be the sticky engine of growth. And then finally, the last engine of growth is the viral engine of growth. So this is where you take your happy customers and you turn them into advocates of your product and be able to help spread what you're doing. Now, for many products, a number of these engines of growth apply. Probably some of you are saying, well, all 3 of them apply to me. Which one do I focus on? You have to focus on just one to get the maximum return on your experiments, or the maximum return on your investment. And the way that you pick that one is try to figure out which one of those triggers has the impact to 10x your business. Which of them has the impact to really 10x the numbers you're getting? So in the case of Facebook, they had all 3. They had high activation, high retention. They could have tried to make Facebook more sticky. They could have tried to use even paid advertising to drive people into Facebook. They certainly could raise a lot of money to do those kinds of things. But they had the biggest engine of growth, which is the viral engine of growth. And so for them, they really doubled down on that one and emphasized certain features and made certain things possible in the product where they rode that engine of growth. So for them, that was their 10x engine of growth. For a lot of us, virality is not an option, so we have to look at the other 2 and figure out which one has that big impact. All right. So now that you've got more customers, you start to get more quantitative data. The terrain doesn't get that much simpler. It actually gets harder to now even get actionable metrics, because at this point, you've got a lot more customers who are generating not only a lot more data. Okay. Who are generating not only a lot more data, but at this point, you are pushing a lot more features, you're running a lot more marketing campaigns, and so it becomes harder to make sense, to drive cause and effect into what you're doing. So when you push features out, when things go well, we all say, yes, that was because of these features. We are really happy that the feature had this big impact. And when things don't go that well, we have to say, oh, it's because of something else. We look for something else to blame. And that's that rationalization. So when you're looking at your data, you have to be able to draw causality. And the reason that is complicated is that the customer lifecycle is not a short lifecycle event. It usually can take several weeks or months to really come to fruition, which is illustrated in these pictures over here. So the blue dots are showing groups of customers that sign up to your product. There's a time shift to when they activate, and there's a further time shift to when they start paying you. And so it becomes very hard to really measure the impact of changes that you make at the very beginning, because it's going to take time for those effects to really trickle forward. And so really what cohorts do is they let you correct for these time shifting by sliding all these time frames back and really let the blue dots align, so I can look at groups of customers and see how they really behave over time. And that's really the power that you get with cohort analysis. So we actually emphasize measuring everything really as a cohort. The other challenge that you get with metrics is that metrics only tell you what's going wrong, but they don't tell you why things are going wrong. And so what we typically end up doing is we look at the data and we come up with new hypotheses, we come up with new features to go test. And while that is good, it's still very hit or miss. And we run experiments that way. There's an even better way, which is getting your customers to really tell you what's going wrong. What's going wrong with this remote? OK. All right, so and so this is now getting into the realm of something we call lifecycle messaging. So as people are going through your funnel, you can be able to message them and be able to learn from them to actually inform yourself to what might be going wrong and the kinds of features and things you might build. So this is a screenshot of one of our dashboards where I'm showing an activation subfunnel, and you can see a drop-off. So I can look at these numbers and be able to see where in the process people are dropping off, and maybe I'll have some product ideas. But you have to go behind the numbers. You have to go to the people. So on the right-hand side, you see all the people who successfully finished our funnel. And I can toggle this. I can actually look at all the people who failed. Can we switch next slide, please? And so these are all the people who failed to activate. So I want to be able to see the people that successfully activated, the people that failed to activate. And then that gives me a lot of ammunition to now go and email them and be able to ask them what might go wrong. Now, this doesn't scale once you've got hundreds of people signing up to your product every day. So this is where you can go the next step and even automate that. So this is an email that we send out when people run into problems. So after 7 days in this particular case, we send them a simple email saying something went wrong. Please tell us what went wrong. And the email is very personalized. It comes from me. And this campaign alone generates 20 to 30 emails a day where people come back and in their own words tell us why they haven't achieved what we want them to achieve. And that is a very rapid way for us to take that learning and then formulate new sets of hypotheses, which we then test. Now, the final point that I want to make is that when you do this experimentation, you're going to get a lot of failure. You're going to get a lot of experiments fail. Now, typically, most entrepreneurs run away from failure. And there's a often overly abused term in the lean startup world called a pivot. So they justify these drastic changes in directions based on their gut. So they think that they've got these failures and they now need to go and pivot. Well, pivot is one of those overly used words, and it has to be grounded in learning. If you don't ground your pivots in learning, you're really doing a see what sticks approach, which is not a very optimal way to learn. Right. Slide change. OK. There's a reason that this hockey stick curve is flat in the beginning. It's because before you find that hockey stick curve, you're going to get a lot of things that don't work. Finding a business model that works starts with going through that flat part. And so you're going to see a lot of failed experiments. And the final point that I want to leave you with is that rather than running away from the failed experiments, you actually have to dig deeper and get into the root cause of those failures, because that's really where the breakthrough insights lie. If you don't have any problems, then you're not going to get those breakthrough insights. You're not going to unlock that hockey stick curve. So I don't know if we have much time for questions. We can switch to questions.
Hi, my name is Esther Dyson. I actually read a book of Steve Blank,
yep.
And he said that there is a difference between which market are you in. So like from our side, we are, for instance, in a new market, and so how do we do customer development with customers who doesn't know what they want? They don't know that they need this product. How do you ask them questions?
Well, so I would almost say that, if you've got time, we can talk offline to see if you're really in a new market or not. So sometimes we think we're in a new market, but we really aren't. And the way that you find that out is by finding out not whether customers understand what you are trying to do, because that's a solution, but really find out what is the underlying problem you're trying to solve, and do they do anything today to solve that problem. And oftentimes, there are many alternatives. So even the iPad, it looks like a new product in the new category, but it replaced so many things that we did before, from even reading magazines and newspapers, the web browser, all kinds of things. And so that would be the first place I would start. The other thing which I would say is that new markets are really hard for startups to really get into. So if you're really in a new market situation, you should consider whether you've got enough resources to educate your marketplace, or you have to go figure out something, figure out a different problem or different market to go address.
One more quick question, if possible.
Catch.
Hello, my name is Marcus. I'm from the Accessibility Software Solutions, and you said that you should charge in the first moment you create your MVP. My question to you is, doesn't that piss off users to give you actually feedback and they are charged for helping you out, improving your product?
Right, and so I would say that's positioning. If you are positioning yourself as, great user, we need your feedback to help us, then by all means they feel like they're giving you, it's a privilege that you are asking for. But here's the thing, if you're solving a must-have problem and you put something out there, customers actually jump through hoops to get to the solution because you're helping them save more money, you're helping them save time, whatever that end goal is. And that's the definition of the must-have problem, is that it's as important as product market fit. When customers, those early adopters, jump through hoops and are happy to pay you. So there are products that we build where people pay us in advance of actually building the product because they know where we're going is going to be where they want to get to. Now, you of course de-risk it. You offer them money-back guarantees, and you say, if you don't get the value, we're not going to charge. We're going to give you your money back. But putting money not only helps you, is the first form of validation for you, but it also brings more skin to the game. The customers are happy to pay for value that they will realize. If you're asking for feedback, that's a very weak and a soft commitment. All right? Thank you very much. And so I'm going to be around if people want to ask more questions. I'm happy to do that one-on-one. Thanks.